Hey guys, Omni here. So I finally watched Batman The Long Halloween Part 1 and Part 2. Since Part 2 finally came out this week, I decided not to review them individually, but review it as a singular film. Because I felt like that's, well, one, that's how the comic came out, and this is definitely the way I feel like this is meant to be watched. So I felt like it might be a little bit redundant to kind of do a review for each individual part of it. So I watched it all in one go. If you want to see my reactions to the film in its entirety, you can check it out on Patreon or if you join the membership here on the channel. But I really enjoyed it. You know, this is a pretty nefarious comic. It's well renowned for the storyline, the pacing, the intrigue that is throughout. Because this is very much like a detective drama. This involves Jim Gordon, Batman, and Harvey Dent trying to figure out how to bring down the Carmine Falcone empire. And on top of that, this killer services that starts killing members of Falcone's organization each time on a different holiday, getting them the name of the holiday killer. And we see how, and this drags on for a full year, and that's why it starts in Halloween and ends in Halloween, and that's why it's called, a lot of people call this the Long Halloween. It's a really fun ride as they try to figure out who this killer is, what their aim is, and it's really interesting to see how it tests our heroes, and how it really kind of pushes and blurs this line of morality, the justice system, and all of that, and your friendships, and how this crusade, no matter who or what side you're on, how it takes a toll on your life and yourself. And I really, really like that. This time around, Batman is voiced by Jensen Ackles. And if you saw my reaction to the initial trailer, there's a couple moments in the trailer where I was like, man, I just hear Jensen Ackles. I don't know. It was a little weird. There were some moments where I was just like, okay, it sounds good here, not so much here, but I don't know. I don't know where that went. I don't know if they re-recorded it outside of the trailers, because when I was watching this, there's not one time where I didn't feel like Jensen Ackles disappeared into Bruce Wayne and Batman. I think he did a fantastic job with it, and I think he's right up there with some of the greats as far as being an iconic voice. I mean, it's hard to live up to Kevin Conroy, and I'm not saying it's near that, but I think he does a really good job and disappears into this character. I know he had some concerns about, his accent slipping through and stuff like that, so it was great. I thought he did fantastic. Then you have Josh Duhamel in here as Harvey Dent. Also, another great choice. Troy Baker returns as the Joker. Billy Burke plays Jim Gordon. And our DC mastermind, this guy is coming up. He's been in The Flash. He's going to be in the upcoming Suicide Squad. He's all over the place in comic book films and TV shows as of late. David Dastmalchian is in here as Julian Day, the Calendar Man, and we will be seeing him soon on the big screen as the Polka Dot Man in the Suicide Squad with James Gunn. There's one other performance in here I do want to call out, and that is, of course, Naya Rivera. This was her final role ever, because she passed away not too long after the recording of it. And it's sad because she does give a really good voice performance in here. She also died really young, so my heart goes out to her family. I don't really know her. I've never seen her in anything myself, but it's just kind of a sad story in general. But still, the performance came out great. Catwoman, honestly, for me, kind of became one of the highlights of this storyline. It was really interesting how they came into it. It's been a long time since I read The Long Halloween, so there was a lot of details. Really the only detail that I could recall, and I had to refresh myself going into this, because I remember there was this quote that Jensen Ackles released that said, "This flips the script on The Long Halloween." And I was like, okay, is this going to pull like what the DC animated universe did with the Hush adaptation, where they kind of change who and what Hush is by the end of it? I was like, is it going to pull like one of those? So I was like, I was like, okay, just in case it is, I've definitely, before watching this, because even if I forget something or if it's been a long time since I've seen something, it's a lot more interesting to me if I go into it not having a refresher a lot of the time. Of course, there's going to be like nods and things that I miss, or but whatever. But it keeps the surprises up if you forget a lot of things, and the older I get, the more I forget. But I was like, okay, if it's going to pull like that, I'm at least going to figure out, like remind myself what the big twist was, and I did. However, they stuck pretty much to the script for me, so I'm not sure what he meant with that. There's definitely some deviation here and there, but not like drastic changes like they did with Hush. It was a fun ride. I do kind of feel like it could have been fleshed out a little bit more. There's some beats in here that I feel like could have used a little bit more of an expansion. And I think that comes at it being just an adaptation, obviously, of the comic. But I thought they did a really good job at keeping the tone, keeping the pace. Like, it didn't feel like they needed to interject action everywhere in it. This is a very slow burn, slow build kind of, it's more of a detective story, honestly, with some action sprinkled in. Of course, this continues in the continuity of this new DC animated universe. It's the third now in this lineup. This is our Batman introduction to him in this world, even though back in Superman Man of Tomorrow, you get that little tease of him at the end of the film with Clark Kent looking down at this newspaper, talking about this bat figure seen and sighted in over in Gotham. I thought that was a nice little nod. And of course, we had, what was it? The Justice Society of America, World War II, which was really kind of a Flash movie. It would introduce this version of Barry into the new continuity. Of course, that ends with him and Superman fighting Brainiac, and they're like, maybe just in case things get out of hand, we should start to form a team. So this is our Batman film, and I'm not sure if we're going to get a Wonder Woman, because we got a Wonder Woman in the Flash film. So I'm not too sure. I don't know. Don't know how this is going to fit in the grand scheme of things, but I like them building out this world because it's really interesting. I really like the new art direction as well. It's very, I mentioned this in my review of Man of Tomorrow, and I think that stands true here. It's very retro futuristic. Obviously, Batman's got a lot of tech. He's got his Batmobile, but it still keeps that like old-timey 50s, 40s, 30s feel that Gotham City always kind of had, even in the Batman the Animated Series, like the old-timey cars that the cops have, the look of the buildings, the Gothic architecture. But then you still have the computers, the sciencey stuff, and all that stuff that he uses that is extremely high-tech. I like that blend. Again, the art style itself and that kind of timeline ambiguity always, like I said back in Man of Tomorrow, reminds me of a lot of Archer, except well done, much better animated. They've got a better animation team behind this, and I think that's obviously because they can afford to put a little bit more into the animation than Archer could, of course, and that makes the fight scenes really interesting. What I liked about the fight scenes in this is that they were very technical. Like, you could see every action, every reaction to a strike and attack. You could see Batman countering, being like they must have studied some like martial arts and, you know, hand-to-hand combat for reference in this, because it's very much real combat. Of course, there's some stylization, there's some uplifting to it. You know, obviously Batman can get thrown around a lot harder than you could throw a normal human. So there is that elevated reality to some of the fights. But when it comes to the technicality, how the fights are executed, they're quick. They're like, you get some great wides of a lot of the combat. It's very creative, and it's really energetic. I really enjoyed it. Again, I think the action scenes are a little few and far between, and that's not a problem because it's more about the story. It's more about the investigation. It's about the characters and the consequences of everything that's going on, the sacrifices everybody is making. This is clearly a Batman that hasn't been doing this too long, because he's not yet the greatest detective that exists out there, because he's definitely much more the brute, the fighter. He's learning that he has to kind of go through this journey of stopping and analyzing the situation, casing different angles to approach people. He's still not even got the art of like interrogation yet. So there's like this interplay that Jim Gordon, this relationship, this dynamic, and these roles that are equally shared between Harvey Dent, Jim Gordon, and Batman in this, that is really well balanced, and I like that. Yeah, man, I really enjoyed it. You know, the part 2 is where a lot of, obviously that's the climax. That's where a lot of the bigger set pieces come in, and it's a lot of fun. There's some great moments in it, and it's a blast. I definitely recommend it. I have to imagine that they're going to, like with what they did with the Death of Superman and Reign of the Superman, which were originally, you know, a part 1 and a part 2 of the same story. Release them as a singular 3-hour epic. So I have to imagine they're going to do this at some point, but they're obviously going to hold off on that for a little while, so people buy the individual DVDs and the Blu-rays and buy them individually on iTunes or Amazon Prime like what I did. So who knows? I definitely recommend it. Whether you buy them now, whether you've already bought them, or you are kind of not too sure yet, I would recommend it. This was a really great Batman story. It was really well told. It was a pretty solid adaptation of the comic, and this won't be the last adaptation of the Long Halloween that we're going to be getting in the next year or two, because Matt Reeves' The Batman is inspired by this very story. Obviously, completely different focus. It's going for a more down-to-earth, gritty Zodiac killer kind of thing, but he said a lot of the inspiration for the film has come from this storyline. So, could be some good research before the Batman comes out with Robert Pattinson. So, definitely recommend this. If not, at the very least, check out the comic itself and give that a read. If you got DC Universe Infinite, or well, DC Infinite, I think is just what it's called now. I believe it's on there. So you can check that out if you got that. Otherwise, Comixology, your local comic store or something like that. I'm sure you can find The Long Halloween somewhere, especially right now. But guys, if you've seen it, what did you think of it? Sound off the comments. Let me know your thoughts if you've seen it yourself. And we'll carry on the conversation after the video. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Before we go, I want to shout out our channel legends, Mandy Sherritt, Ryan, Karen, Jason Coleman, and Philly Vane. As always, I love you guys, and I really appreciate your support. You guys want to talk DC, Marvel, TVs, movies in general, anime, video games, whatever, come follow me on all my socials or join me in my Discord. Links to all of those are in the description of this video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care, everybody.